My dad had so much pride in being a father because he waited so long that he brought me everywhere almost right off the bat. People have this totally backwards. We go at our goals first and our health second, and then we lose both in the process. Physical autonomy means that you get to do whatever the hell you want to do in your lifestyle because you've earned the right to do it because you've trained smart in the gym and prepared your body for performance. But the thing I want people to avoid is having to sit out on the bench in their life. If you're going in and you're winning in the gym and you're losing in life, that's not anything you want to be doing.
One of my personal missions, not my business mission, but one of my personal ones is to help people eliminate regret.
I think that our health is on us. Nobody's there to save you. We have resources, we have experts that can come in, we have books and we have apps and we have articles, but ultimately it comes down to you and making a decision to want more out of your life, to want more out of your health, to want more out of your entire lifestyle. And I think that many people are pushed to the brink of breaking before they make a change, when in all actuality, that change is right in front of us from almost all of us. We just need to go out and actually do it. But nobody's coming to save you. You got to save yourself, and you got to be the first one to go in and take responsibility.
This is Sparta!
Welcome back to Spartan Leadership. I'm your host, Josh Kosnick, and this is your podcast for leadership, inspiration, and impact. Today, we got a great guest in the studio, which is always my favorite, in here versus on Zoom. Let me give my friend John a great proper introduction. Dr. John Rusin is one of the most respected voices in strength and performance today, a man who's helped redefine what it means to train smart, stay healthy, and perform for life. He's an internationally recognized strength coach, physical therapist, and injury prevention expert with nearly 2 decades of experience training everyone from MLB All-Stars, NFL All-Pros, to Olympic gold medalists and world record-holding powerlifters. It's vast, man. Named one of the Men's Health Top 50 health and fitness experts, John built his entire philosophy around a simple but powerful mission: bridging the gap between performance and pain-free living. His pain-free performance specialist certification has now trained over 20,000 professionals around the world. And his brand new book, which I got here in the studio, Pain-Free Performance, Move Better, Train Smarter, and Build an Unbreakable Body, takes that mission even further. So let's get into this, brother.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is exciting.
This is fun. Let me show everyone this book. Because he handed it to me, and it is truly like I could do curls with this book. It's like the size and weight of a Bible. It's freaking amazing. So we'll get into that in a minute. But I always like to start like, where'd you get started in this world? Like, what was your impetus? Like, what was your motivation to be like this? Because it's rare that someone finds their like mission and purpose as early and young as you do.
I was born into it. I was born as the son of Dr. and Dr. Rusin. Not a whole lot of people know this. My dad was a legendary athletic director in the Williamsville Central School Districts in Buffalo, New York, where I grew up. And he was there for 37 years until the day he died. And my mom was a professor of nursing and health and human services at Damon College, which was our local university there. So she was there for 35 years, and she was at the top of her profession. So when I came along, my mom was almost 40. My dad was in his mid-40s, so they were older parents. But I was dropped right into the field, right on the court, right into the weight room. And my dad had so much pride in being a father because he waited so long that he brought me everywhere almost right off the bat. So I was truly born into it, and I was brought along as an only child everywhere with every single opportunity and in every different environment.
Man, that's awesome. So you didn't try and push back against mom and dad?
Not too much. Like, I grew up as an athlete as well, as you'd imagine, so I played everything. Academics were really important in my household, as you could imagine. So it was all about sports. It was all about school. And our 3 family unit was really strong because we did a lot together, whether it was going out and traveling, as my mom did keynote presentations, or whether it was going to my sporting events, or just enjoying time at home together watching the Bills, as we always did on Sundays. But I think that I respected my parents so much and what they were doing, because the way I saw it, they were amazing. My dad was the man in town. everybody knew Dr. James Rusin. And my mom, when I stepped on campus, had a huge amount of respect from everybody, including the college president. And I was like, man, I want to be like them when I'm older.
Yeah. So they set that example early for you. How'd you end up here in Madison then?
So I left graduate school in 2011 in Buffalo, New York from Damon College. I got my doctorate in physical therapy there. Went out to Southern California, spent almost a decade there. And then when my son was going to be born, he was going to be born here in Madison, Wisconsin. And I ended up moving here to be with him and his mom. And that was 10 years ago now.
That's awesome. So you've worked with some of the top athletes in the world, but your message is about pain-free, sustainable performance. Where did that come from? Was that from your parents, or how did that come into play personally for you?
I was an athlete that was injured. As cliche as that sounds, that kept me from going into the Major League Baseball draft in 2006 when I was prepped and ready to roll out of a senior year in high school. I had a torn UCL in my throwing arm, and that is a pretty catastrophic injury for a baseball player.
Yeah.
I rehabbed it poorly. I was back into strength and conditioning in a poor setting, and I made it back to being able to play in college. I had a Division I scholarship, and I made it to being on great teams, and I transferred into a top 25 team at University of Rhode Island my sophomore year. In 13 games into the season, as a Northern baseball player, you know you're going to be playing on poor fields. I dove for a ball in center field. I got my left arm caught under me, my non-throwing arm, and I had another UCL tear. So I have one of the most unique injury profiles of anyone that I've ever seen, which is bilateral UCL tears in your elbow. So this is the type of thing you would go in for Tommy John surgery for.
Yeah.
I never did. And I found ways after my baseball career to start to strengthen, to start to rehabilitate and prehab around these injuries that are otherwise pretty detrimental to your lifestyle and not only your sport. And I think that was my entry point into wanting to do more, wanting to do things smarter, but also wanting to work with more athletes in the overhand throwing sports, because that was really my focus and my specialty. When I was in graduate school, I actually worked on a doctorate study over at the University of Buffalo, which was all about overhand throwing mechanics. And that doctoral dissertation actually got bought by Major League Baseball at the time by the principal doctorate student. And that was something that I thought was so cool that I wanted to continue on, and I wanted to be in that space. I wanted to be competitive. I wanted to be part of a winning team, but I also wanted to show my academics and also my background of life in general to be able to actually find value in some of these places.
Who was it? Who's the famous surgeon? Andrews?
Dr. James Andrews.
Yeah. Ever had any interactions with him?
I have not.
Well, you dropped Peter Attia earlier, so I figured you may have run into the famous surgeon as well. But that's the guy everyone sees for Tommy John surgery, if I'm not mistaken.
It is. And Tommy John is one of those things today that we're seeing it earlier and earlier in children, which is shocking. And I think that things are about to change in terms of youth baseball and youth overhand throwing sports, because things can't get much worse in terms of the injury rates, and also it being really limiting to somebody not only being able to play, but being able to be continuously physically fit and active for a lifetime.
Yeah.
You know, at 13 years old, your whole physicality can change for a lifetime. Like, that's a big deal.
Do you think it has to do with the pushing our kids into one sport and then playing that every weekend? Do you think that is
Absolutely.
it? Yeah.
Absolutely. That early sports specialization has become more and more popular as the years go on. When you and I grew up, we were playing multiple sports.
Everything.
We were playing everything. And I ended up playing 3 sports in high school, and I played 1 sport in college. And I thought that was the right way, because that's the way that my dad taught everyone else in his system to do it. He said, hey, you want to be the best athlete. And when the best athlete starts to specialize at 17, 18, 19, that's when they go off and they do great things. You can go into professional sports. You can start to trial for the Olympics, and you're peaking at the right age. But we have kids right now, right here in Madison, Wisconsin, that are peaking at 11 and 12 years old. But the last time I checked, nobody gives a shit how good you are when you're 11 and 12 winning tournaments in Iowa.
No, not at all. In fact, it's funny, in my college career, when I stopped playing football, I got recruited to play lacrosse. It was a club sport at Whitewater in the Midwest. At our age, lacrosse wasn't a big deal as it is becoming a much bigger deal here in the Midwest. But they just saw a physical kid that was an athlete, and they're like, hey, come try this. And I was like, sure.
Yeah.
But nowadays people are like, well, that's not my sport. I don't know if I could do that. Like, no, back then I'm like, well, I've played every sport. I might as well try this one as well. And I end up starting right away and having a lot of fun.
There's so many different social pressures when it comes to early sports specialization for the kids. And it's never about the kid. It's about the parents.
Yeah.
It's about the community. It's about the social pressures of keeping up with the Joneses. And that's just not right. But when you look at trying to early sports specialize your child, because that's what they are, a child, you really have no distinct advantages up until the age of 15, if not 16. And you look at some of the top performers in the entire world, 94% of professional athletes today and Olympic medalists today played multiple sports up into the age of 15. So if you want a competitive advantage, don't early sport specialize. And if you're looking at long-term health implications, the more diverse that we can get in terms of our physical skill sets early on, we can ingrain that movement system to be able to be wide spectrumed and to be able to be diverse, to be able to stand up to health earlier and earlier. So I think that's so important. There's no real advantage.
Yeah, I'm actually a living example of exactly what you're saying. I didn't play a lick of football outside of backyard football until my freshman year of high school. I was a soccer player up until then in the fall, right? That was my sport in the fall. I played on travel teams. I was pretty dang good. And I fell in love with football. In freshman year, I decided to give up soccer, go out for the football team, and that ended up being my sport. But I credit my footwork as a wide receiver to being a soccer player growing up.
For sure.
Then I ended up going to play college with football. There's, just like you said, these are transferable skills and being able to use your body in different ways.
I see this too from a leadership perspective. We are not producing leaders in youth athletics today. Reason being is it's a me-centric culture today in early sports specialization. It turns into me on this travel ball team, me in my private lessons, me working on baseball in the middle of winter as it's snowing and -20 in Madison, Wisconsin. And you are going out and you're seeking different tournaments and different showcases, and it's all me, 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 me. And one of the number one things that we want out of our youth athletes is to develop work skills, to develop teamwork, to develop the ability to work hard and withstand stress and challenge. And when we have a me-centric approach to a team sport, I don't think that transfers into having leaders in life. I really don't.
Yeah. Well, this wasn't on my question list, and this was, we could literally talk about that topic this whole episode. So I'm going to pivot because I don't want to get us rabbit holed. This wasn't on my question list, but you brought it up earlier that you got to train Peter Attia, 10, 12 years ago.
Yes.
And now you're kind of following in his footsteps of writing an amazing book. And talk a little bit about that relationship and how that came about, because now it's, he's one of the biggest names on the planet in longevity. And you've put out a book that's sold 12,000 copies in a very short time. Talk a little bit about that relationship, how it came about, and then the kind of the nuance with him as a client.
I was purely lucky. At that point in time, I had taken a residency out in Southern California, and I was working part-time as a sports performance physical therapist, and the other time was to make any dollars that I possibly could as a personal trainer. And the place that I was working was called Fitness Quest 10 in San Diego, California, North County. And I was dumped into being able to try to learn from great personal trainers, great strength coaches, great physicians and physical therapists, all in this multidisciplinary center. I was also making next to no money. And that's
most
something.
Trainers when they start out are that.
Yeah. Absolutely. But I was taking this residency on to try to learn. And I was able to shadow and actually go through clients with a 4, 5, 6 a.m. schedule when I didn't have any clients of my own. And one of my mentors was actually training Peter at the time. And nobody knows that this bald, really in shape guy that asked a lot of questions was going to be the man that he is, which is one of my ultimate role models and mentors from what he's been able to do in the industry today. But he was working in a different field at the time, but he still had that mental tenacity going through to ask the right questions, to work extraordinarily hard and smart, because he knew, I think even early on before it became him being the voice of health and longevity today as he is, he wanted to be able to practice it himself. And it was blatantly apparent that he was there to learn, he was there to work hard, but also able to gain an expertise in his own body. So I think eventually, 15 years later, he could pay it back towards others.
Yeah. You mentioned the questions that he would ask. He was very curious about understanding why you were telling him to do what you were telling him to do. Talk about that for a minute, because a lot of people like me, I was giving myself as an example, are just like, no, I trust you.
Yeah.
I want you to do what's best for me. So just tell me what to do and I do it.
Well, I see this. I work with a lot of top performers, and they all have this in common, is that when you are going above and beyond just what you want to do for yourself, you are almost your first beta test. And you want to know the rationale why behind what you're doing, because I think that there's something clicking into their mind saying that, hey, I think I'm going to do this, but I think that there's something more than just myself. So when you ask questions to be able to learn, and you probably have a memory that is just like a steel trap up there, writing things in the back of your eyeballs, you're able to do things and be able to not only regurgitate, but to be able to hold that information and then display the information and deep dive into your research at a deeper level. But I think one of the number one things in training is that we need to feel what we're asking others to do. We can't just be the science dweeb, just saying, hey, this research study says this, well, this literature says that. That's all well and good until you get a pump in your muscles, a sweat on your face, your heart rate at 200, and you are withstanding fatigue. So I think that Peter knew that early on, that, hey, I want to be able to go in and practice this, but I need to know the rationales why. And right now, he has a team in Austin, Texas that is awesome. Multidisciplinary team. You know, this is decades later, but he has personal trainers that have been through pain-free performance proudly. He has chiropractors that have been through pain-free performance, physical therapists, exercise physiologists. And it's like, wow. Number one, Peter always respected the profession of personal training and coaching. And that was probably the number one thing that I took from him. This guy was the man.
Yeah.
He's the man in a totally different area, but he respected his coach. He respected me. He respected everyone in the facility, and he worked hard and he bought in. And that was something that I think maybe it played a small role in what he eventually went on to do and continues to do. But it was something that I think just winners do.
Yeah, I agree. Winners do. They're curious. Curiosity is one of the most underrated traits out there in humanity today, because so many people lead with more humility.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, not humility, but pride and ego, and not lean into that humility.
Interestingly enough, so Peter has one of the best books ever written, Outlive. If anyone hasn't read that book before, go in, get through it. A lot of deep and nuanced information in there that is very widespread. But I think he opened up the conversation about health and longevity. We were talking before we went on camera saying that, you know, we've been working health and longevity for the last 19 years with pain-free performance. And it was definitely not cool 2 decades ago.
Yeah.
It wasn't cool up to 5 years ago. And people were like, hey, longevity, that's for old people, right? It's old people training. And today they go, oh, longevity and health training, that's about optimization. And I think the tides have definitely turned. But looking at the Outlive book, I love the ability to go in and say, hey, we need to strength train. Hey, muscle mass is important. Hey, VO2 max is a huge predictor of your health span and your lifespan. But I think pain-free performance offers the ability to go, hey, here's how to do it. Here's the programs to follow.
Yeah.
And here is the track to success with running a model that is multimodal, that is focused on health and longevity, but it is also well-rounded so we can actually be healthier human beings. But everyone has their specialty. And I think the specialty in terms of training for health and longevity and the actually how to do it is where I kind of fit into some of these pieces.
I love it. So this is actually a great segue because you've seen the industry move from more is better to smarter is better. And I think whether it's the last few years or however we want to frame that, why do so many people still resist that shift?
I think there's a shift back and forth. We can think of it as a pendulum swing. I would say 20 years ago, we had the pendulum that was like no pain, no gain. And we needed to go out and hit high volumes and high intensities. And if you're in pain, work through it, because this is how you get huge. This is how you get strong. And that is all that matters. But I think maybe like 10 or 15 years ago, we started to shift off that because enough people getting hurt, like they have common sense. They're like, man, I need to do something a little bit different. But then we got into this fitness industry that was pseudo physical therapy. All of a sudden we're in the corner foam rolling and stretching for a 45 out of 60 minute session. And you're like, I don't think I ever trained today. We just did like physical therapy exercises. And that's not the right way either. So the middle ground is huge. We need to come in and get what we want out of training, which is eliciting strength, building muscle, burning fat, getting our cardio up, improving mobility. But we also need to stay healthy first and foremost. People have this totally backwards. We go at our goals first and our health second, and then we lose both in the process. So it's always been my belief that if we can be healthy, we can achieve anything. Without your health, you can achieve nothing long-term.
Yeah, I totally believe that, and I'm bored. And that's part of my bridges as well. So it's one of those things where, yeah, I talked to you about some of my pains going into the gym, and like, I got to stay healthy the next 20, 30 years, because if we have to have a shoulder surgery or anything else that takes us off of our game, we're not able to train. And therefore we fall behind and we got to make up ground. And sometimes when we're trying to make up ground, we go harder than we should and end up back in the bed or the hospital or whatever it may be. So the smarter is better. And I love that. You continue to talk more about training smarter, and that requires, as you're saying, like humility, especially in us hard charging type A people that grew up watching Arnold Schwarzenegger and the Muscle Beach guys and wanting to look like that. And obviously those guys, well, maybe not obvious, but to most of us know that there's testosterone, steroids driven culture in that regard. And some of us look for that easy fix. So how do you coach people, especially those high performers, and I'll use myself as an example, to detach from their ego and really adapt the process?
I think we can kick into the ego. We can play into people's ego, but we need to have more widespread of what we're chasing. Many times, egotistical meathead in the gym is very dogmatic in their approach. Only one thing matters in terms of their physical characteristics. But if we can actually broad scope that a little bit more, if we can get 3, 4 different focuses, we have 6 physical characteristics of health and longevity: power, strength, hypertrophy, cardio and conditioning, mobility, and athleticism. A well-rounded training plan is able to adopt all of those. But many people haven't dabbled into anything except for muscle and strength. So they don't even know the amount of dopamine hit that they can get off of moving well and being powerful, or getting out of pain and improving their mobility, or just simply training more intelligently for their body by utilizing different exercise selection instead of just force feeding one thing that they think is mandatory in order to get their results. But I think that we are looking at things, at least from a high performing perspective, as how do we actually get better? How do we actually continue to move our results up and get those micro wins that lead to small wins and big wins? And as soon as we do that, people buy in very, very quickly. But if I'm being completely honest, nobody comes to me because they're doing fucking awesome. They're not like, wow, I'm as jacked and tan and lean and pain-free as I've ever been. That's not the person that comes to me. And that's not the person that comes to the average coach or personal trainer. Shit's falling apart. We are dealing with shoulder pain, lower back pain, knees that don't bend, feet that hurt, and we are unable to train. The number one goal for my clients is to ultimately achieve physical autonomy. Physical autonomy means that you get to do whatever the hell you want to do in your lifestyle because you've earned the right to do it because you've trained smart in the gym and prepared your body for performance. And that is where we want to eventually get everybody. You know, you mentioned like Muscle Beach and Arnold and Venice going out and training like that. 3 weeks ago, I was able to be out at Muscle Beach and I did a couple podcasts out in Los Angeles. And I was able to do, on the same day, I did a bodybuilding style session at the original Gold's Gym with a bunch of gym bros, and it was awesome. That same night, I was able to go and do the rings and all the gymnastics stuff at Venice Beach and at Muscle Beach. And I was able to not blow out my shoulders going back and forth on the rings, which was really cool. My son was super impressed. And then I was able to the next morning go out and play pickup basketball like white man can jump style.
Oh, I saw that video of your son hitting some shots too.
It was
right?
amazing. Like that was the best 24 hours that I can remember in a long time. But my body was able to do it. I was physically autonomous to go in and train a little bit differently than I usually train, to do a whole new motor skill that I've never done before with the gymnastics rings, and then be able to actually cut and decelerate and do all this stuff. I haven't played competitive basketball in 10 plus years. And I was able to get on the flight the next day and feel great. That is what I want my clients to feel, because you don't know what you have in front of you. You don't know whether you want to do that half marathon with your buddy. You don't know if you're going to go on a vacation and be on an epic hike when you're in Hawaii. You don't know the things that you have in front of you. But the thing I want people to avoid is having to sit out on the bench in their life.
Yeah. Yeah, let's talk about basketball for a minute, because guys our age, that's one of the number one areas we get injured is a pickup game and blow out our knee or something like that.
We actually have literature. Number one way that people get hurt is pickup recreational basketball. That is the number one killer.
Really?
Yes.
I've just witnessed it with friends in my life. I didn't know that was actual stat.
Yeah.
But so, I follow the knees over toes guy. I can never remember his name.
Ben Patrick.
Ben Patrick. Thank you. Great resource in that and some of the stuff that he's doing. How does someone that wants to play pickup basketball, because they have that and they're in their 40s, how do they need to be treating their training so that they can do that and not sit on the bench?
Basketball is a really interesting one because it is going to be a test of multiple different physical characteristics all in one.
Throw pickleball in there as well, because there's a lot of cutting in there and a lot of injuries.
Yeah, so pickleball and basketball have very similar physical requisites in order to not only go out and do it, but to actually compete at a decently high level and have fun with it and withstand the stress and being able to enjoy your life after without pain, without injury, without burnout. So you're thinking about the first thing that you want to be able to start to implement inside of the gym, which is power training. Power training doesn't just mean like super high box jumps. It means anything that you're training faster than you already are. So you're moving faster, you're training faster, you're able to actually get in athletic movements that feel like maybe the movements that you would be doing on the court, on pickleball, or on basketball. That is something that almost no one is training today. And especially the people that need it the most are the people over 35. They go, oh, it's just all about muscle and strength here. No, it's not. Power is the first physical characteristic that is lost due to normalized aging, but I'd argue that there's nothing normal about losing your capacities. So power's the number one, and power is acceleration and deceleration, more specifically the deceleration. That's where people tend to get banged up on the court with pickleball, is that they're tweaking their knees, they're doing all these things because they can't hit the brakes. So we want to train hitting the brakes in the gym, so then hopefully it can transfer into our sport or into our activities.
Give a few examples on that. I think I have some in my head, but I'd rather hear from the expert.
So everyone is jumping up, when in actuality, we need to learn how to catch down. So a lot of the drills that we end up doing is being able to do something like a depth jump. And it doesn't mean that we're jumping off the top of the squat rack and trying to land. It means anywhere from 6, maybe up to 12 inches is we're actually having a landing mechanism being short, sweet, and muscularly activated so we can actually maintain our mechanical positions. So that is a neurological skill, but it can also stress the tendons and the musculotendinous junctions where vast majority of these soft tissue injuries happen in such a way that we can start to callus the system. But anything that is a change of direction, so we're thinking like old school agility drills, that's cool for people over 40. You don't need to be in the NFL Combine to do a speed ladder. Things that are acceleration and deceleration based, that move you laterally, that move you in rotation, that also alter your stance and in a non-symmetrical stance, those are the things that we really want to try to bulletproof. But in terms of upper body deceleration, I'm a really big fan of landmine training, so putting the barbell down on one end and accelerating it and decelerating it, and then also using things like bands and kettlebells. The kettlebell is probably the number one decelerative tool that we'll use for the older populations that want power in their system, because it is safe, it is effective, and it has minimal amount of loading and maximal amount of muscular recruitment. And that's the name of the game when it comes to training pain-free as you get older.
I love it. I was thinking about speed skaters. I was thinking about the bands that you were talking about, some of the cone drills from the old football days. Those are, and it's funny, I've gone in waves of doing more of that before my workout, or before my lift, I should say, to less of it. I was just talking to the head trainer at Carbon about this. I was like, hey, we haven't done enough agility stuff lately. And he's like, you're right. It hasn't been built in the program. He's like, we get on that with the bands, with the cones, with the ladders, as a precursor to our actual lifts. But man, I got my ass kicked in a workout Wednesday. It was for time. And my wife put up a time of 21 minutes on these 2 rounds. And she's great at cardio. Yeah. And so it started with 1,000-meter row, and then there's kettlebells, there's burpees, there's all this different stuff in there. And I shot my load on the first round. I did the row in under 4 minutes and just moving through it. I think I finished the first round in 7. And then the next one took me 11 minutes. I texted my wife after. I was like, hey, I texted her a picture of the chalkboard showing her I beat her time. I was like, you almost killed me. I was like,
there's nothing that's going to stroke that ego harder than your wife's score being up on the board and you needing to beat it.
Well,
like
she goes, why'd you have to beat me? I was like, it's not about you. I was like, oh, if there's a number on the board, I'm going to try and beat it. I don't have an off switch still at my age of 45. So I actually sometimes do have to be careful depending on the workout. And choosing to do it or not do it for time, because that competitive switch for me still does not turn off.
The things that we need to be thinking about, especially as we're getting older and we want to be more pain-free and we want to have longevity with our practices, is that we need to be monitoring the basics. Basics are going to be the overall volume or the overall workload that you're going to be doing, not only in one workout, but throughout a training week, but also the intensity. Intensity is like, how heavy are you actually going to lift? Or the opposite side of intensity is like, how much balls to the wall are you actually going to go where you're unrecoverable? So we tend to go like moderate in terms of intensity, moderate in terms of volume. And then the number one thing that we're looking at in terms of a result base from that is that you're feeling good at the end of a training session and you're recoverable for the next day, because we want to stay physically active even on our off days. So those are the big litmus tests for us. Are we recoverable and are we still feeling good? Because that is huge. Like, you need to be feeling good on your daily basis. If you're going in and you're winning in the gym and you're losing in life, that's not anything you want to be doing.
So what is the litmus test for a person that's in shape? How often should they be going high intensity in a given week?
My clients will go anywhere from 3 to 4 times per week where they're training extraordinarily hard. They'll have an emphasis on power, strength, and hypertrophy. Heavy weights, moderate to higher volumes, and they are actually getting a training session that you're like, damn, I went in and crushed that. The other 2 to 3 days per week, we're doing things like restoration work, recovery work, working zone 2, low intensity, low impact, steady state cardio, doing maybe a couple conditioning rounds, and working mobility and things that make us feel better. Trying to put all these different pieces together. It doesn't always have to be a kick-ass session. And we use a high-low principle. If you have a high day where you really go nuts, then you have a low day the next day. And if you can alternate that on and off, that works really well for people. Yeah,
that's really good. Before we get into the book, I want to ask about some psychology. What role does mindset play in pain-free performance? Can someone's mental habits actually cause or perpetuate physical pain?
Absolutely. The number one thing and the first thing that we cover in pain-free performance is movement mastery mindset. Before we talk about breathing, before we talk about bracing or warming up or strength or hypertrophy, it's all about what's up here. What's up here potentiates everything, because most likely we need to overcome something. Overcoming pain, overcoming injuries, overcoming chronic stress load, that is something that needs to start with our mental acuity. And it's something that we need to respect the process and respect the stress cycles. With a movement mastery mindset, we're thinking about being able to respect our movement system, knowing very well that we're always going to be a work in progress, but also that our quality quotient is most likely the highest thing that we could possibly work on in terms of pushing ourselves forward year after year, decade after decade. And the way that you move will eventually become the way that you move. And we are practicing a movement system that we want to stand up against the test of time. But many people, they just go in, whether it's like a duration-based workout, whether it's just something that they're trying to compete with, that they lose all their quality quotient, they lose their ability to move well, and then that becomes a habit. And if you're moving poorly as a habit, that's not something that's going to transfer into a better life. But being able to mentally lock in is super important, especially when you get into the workouts themselves. Because I know that not every single day I'm ready to go in and train. There's many times that I'm emails, calls, texts, 30 seconds later, I need to start my workout. And you need to make this mindset shift. And something that we do at Pain-Free Performance is we use something called a 6-phase sequence to be able to bring you from whatever you're doing in your day to peak performance in about 10 minutes. And that starts with deep diaphragmatic breathing. It moves on into some soft tissue modalities to calm the nervous system and to actually get your mind right before you go into a performance-based session. And that's something that's been a game changer for anyone who's used it as a coach and anyone who's experienced it as a client, because we need to make that mental shift almost on a daily basis if we want to go out and get quality work in, if we want to move well, if we want to perform optimally, and we want to actually get better from the session. But the mental limits that people have on themselves can really be reduced if we can just go out and actually do things a little bit more mindfully and actually train the neurological system to be repeat bouting at a high level.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, let's shift into this book for a minute. You said it took 3 years, right?
It didn't quite take 3 years. That was an over-exaggeration. It took 2 years, 7 months, and 18 days between the time that I signed the book contract and we started working to the time that I had this Bible in my hands.
So that's a long time.
It's a really long time.
Right? So whether it's 3 years versus 2 years, 7 months, and 18 days, it's a long time. Because people always ask me, like, how long did it take for me to write my book? And for me, it was about 12 months of writing. You know, I got 4 young kids. I'm running 2 businesses, and I would do it on the weekends or as I felt inspired and had the time. And then it was about 6 months of editing before we got it out to the world. But this 2 years. So what made you at first want to write the book?
I lost my own health. And I didn't know if I was going to be able to travel and share pain-free performance with anyone in our certifications anymore. And that was a tough pill to swallow. Between 2016, when I started speaking and going across the world, doing the 2-day courses and teaching trainers and coaches out there, I was doing anywhere from 35 to 45 events per year. And I was doing it all by myself for the first couple of years. And I thought that I was unbreakable. I thought that I was invincible. I thought that I could go out and do everything. And not only go out and teach, but train hard the mornings before the session with the crew. And then go on an international flight and end up the next weekend in a different city, in a different country. And I thought that I could just go out and do everything. And I continued this on for far too long. And I found myself in 2022 as burned out as I've ever been. And I was teaching a course in your homeland, Chicago, Illinois. And I had an epic Union Station gym, 30,000 square feet, all rented out. I had handpicked people in this VIP course. It's called Lifelong Performance. It was the first time that I was ever giving this new curriculum, which was extraordinarily exciting. And I had 10 of my staff members coming in from all across the country. And this was supposed to be a huge victory lap. I found myself in more pain than I've ever been in. I found out that I had a lot of GI issues, fissuring of my large intestine, which is essentially like holes poked into your large intestine and bleeding into that and causing a massive amount of pain. So that was my first problem. Second problem was I contracted full body poison ivy. I was out taking phone calls, not chilling at all. And 2 days before that course, I was out, we live on the lake, and I was doing weeds as I was taking phone calls because more is always better. Get shit done. Yeah. That was my mindset. Full body poison ivy. And then I got COVID at the same time. It was the kind of COVID you were like, yeah, something's definitely happening. And I ended up doing that course. And the way that we do the course, high energy teaching and coaching and training. And I'd go up and speak for 15 or 20 minutes. And I'd lay down on my back for 15 or 20 minutes just to get enough energy so I could do that a couple of times and get through the day. My wife put me in a bath at the end of day 1, and she put oatmeal on me, and she said, hey, you need to go to the hospital. This is really bad. I've never seen you like this. I don't think you're going to make it. I don't think you're going to make it to day 2. Made it to day 2, did the same thing, feeling even worse. At this point, I have poison ivy on my face and on my groin, which is a medical emergency. And get through the day in Chicago. I drive my 95 minutes home, and I drop off my wife, and I drive right to the hospital and check myself in. And that was a sobering moment because I just got done teaching our longevity model to training. And I checked myself into the hospital after I taught the longevity course. That was a tough one. And that took me into surgery about 6 weeks later, going in for a second surgery, losing my ability to train for about 2 months and having to rebuild the pieces. Lucky for me, I knew the system that I needed to utilize to rebuild my pieces. I knew that things needed to shift, but I was down and out. About Thanksgiving time, 2022, I was down in Florida at my mom's house, and my son was there and my wife was there. And I got a phone call from Glenn Cordoza from Victory Belt, and he was my co-author. And he said, John, I just got out of your pain-free performance specialist certification course. It's awesome. This is how I want to train. This is how I want to live for the rest of my life. We need to make this a book. And at the time I was like, he doesn't know I'm struggling. He just sees, Instagram. He just sees social media. He sees the emails coming through, the courses going off, all this huge amount of success. Little does he know the state that I was in. Yeah. And at that point in time, I never wanted to write the book. I never wanted to put years into something like this because we were on a different track. But I said, yeah, let's do this. Let's write this book, because at that point I was questioning whether this was going to live on without me.
Why does it take us hard chargers? Because you read about my crisis and just shared with our audience your crisis. Why does it take us for us to get to that moment of crisis to actually change?
I love sharing with people. I love pouring into people, and I was putting people in front of myself. I was putting my coaches, 50, 60 of them in a weekend, and I was flying as high as I possibly could. And I was on this adrenaline rush, and I was on this high, and I wanted it to last forever, because I think it gave me meaning to give others tools to be successful, to make more money, to have better relationships with their clients. And that's addicting. It's extraordinarily addicting, not for me to have personal success, but to share things that I have created with others so they can have success. Like, Pain-Free Performance was never supposed to be the Dr. John Rusin show. That's never what I put out for it to be. But it ended up being something that I couldn't let go of. I couldn't let go of it, but I knew that I needed to do something different. And it took me to the point where I couldn't do it anymore to know very well that I was going to lose my physical autonomy. I was going to lose the very thing that I was teaching everyone else not to lose. And I think that was a sobering moment, because I knew that I could no longer help myself. I couldn't help my son or my wife or my family or my community or my coaches without first putting myself first sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a hard one. I've been trying to think about that more as I put my story out there, and now hearing yours as well. I'm really, one of my personal missions, not my business mission, but one of my personal ones is to help people eliminate regret.
Yeah.
Because so many entrepreneurs put everything into their business, and then they have a strange relationship with their kids, or they're on their third marriage, or they start into an addiction, whether it's alcohol or anything else. And it doesn't need to be that way. And that's where I'm trying to have these conversations and put my story out there and be vulnerable about it, so that they can learn the lesson before the crisis happens.
Yeah. With my crisis, though, I had a health crisis, and I didn't necessarily know at the time on Thanksgiving Day of 2022 that I was signing myself up for the workload of a lifetime. I manage 4 businesses. I operate 4 businesses. And then I took on another full-time job and spending about 25 to 30 hours per week in development of this book for almost 3 years. And I was able to withstand the stress by throwing back to the principles of what I teach and being able to eliminate things that didn't matter, and to be able to make sure that I was doing 3 things in my life. I was able to have my family first. I was able to have my fitness still. And I was able to do those 2 things simultaneously while believing in the mission of above and beyond what I was going to do myself and, above me. So all of those things were able to get me through. But when somebody goes, oh yeah, writing a book is hard. Writing a book's the hardest thing that you're ever going to do. And then multiply that by 10 if you're trying to run the businesses, if you're trying to be the spokesperson, if you're trying to scale and do exciting things, because nothing's going to take the back burner. You're just going to burn the candle at both ends. But I think in order to do that, there's different seasons of your life where you do have to go in and you have to do that. But it's not the forever play. The day that this book came out, I was so damn proud, but if I'm being completely honest, I was relieved. I was relieved that it was done with development, and now we can go out and talk about it. And I can talk about my mission. I can talk about my vision for pain-free performance worldwide. And I can talk about the things that we do and get me excited to get up every single morning. And it was like that season ended, in the development and the writing and all the stress that goes into that. And now it's almost like a victory lap, not about the sales of the books, but just about sharing my vision of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So who is the book for? Who should be picking this book up?
So we've done education for coaches and professionals over the last 10 years, and it has the namesake of Pain-Free Performance. But the way in which I wrote this book, even though it's a beast and it's a behemoth, we wrote it for somebody like my mom, who's 73. She wants to train, she wants to be healthy, and she needs the tools to be able to do so. And we wrote it for people to be able to be the enthusiast that wants tools to be able to succeed with their own health, knowing very well that the professionals in the field will benefit hugely from it. I do believe that the future of health and fitness is more of an enthusiast marketplace. I think that there's more large voices out there, like the Peter Attias of the world, the Andrew Hubermans of the world, that are mainstreaming the idea of health. And I do believe that you have to take reign of your own health sometimes. Obviously, go use a trainer, or go use a physical therapist, or go see your physician. But ultimately, it comes down to you on the day-to-day and equipping those people with the tools and pain-free performance. That's who I wrote it for.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it is as thick as a Bible. And a lot of people, because I'm Christian, get intimidated when they're first exploring the Bible, where to start. How does someone digest your book? Where do you suggest if they're looking at this kind of intimidated?
They are going to be intimidated. That's the reaction that we've got. It's been out for about 8 days at this point, and people are getting it for the first time. They're like, holy shit. That is the initial reaction. And then people hold it and they're like, wow. But that's the kind of wow factor that we were going for. But we know very well that people are going to go right into how do I get started? And that's in section 4. It's you pick your perfect program based on your goals, based on your schedule, and you get going right away. And then you go in and you go, hey man, my shoulder's really hurting and my knee is not really moving too well. We have specific pain protocols that you can start to do on your own in 10 or 15 minutes a day to start to rehab, and get healthy while you're actually training intelligently. And then as you start to get success with the programs, with the pain protocols, then you actually start to dig deeper and you start to look at some of the methodology and some of the different things that we have in terms of more acute information. And we know that this is something that will sit on a coffee table and it will remind somebody every single time that they look down at it that, hey, my health is up to me. I need to take responsibility for my own health, but now people finally have the tools to be able to do it.
Yeah, and if nothing else, put it in the rucksack and add another 10 pounds.
That's a great point.
That's awesome. Well, I'm thinking about this book and how your mission is all tied around it. 12,000 copies in 8 days. A lot of, it's interesting in me putting out a book. I don't know about you, but I've had a lot of friends that are high achievers go, what does it take? And they're asking questions because they want to put out a book. What suggestions would you have for those people? Because I don't think like this was with your 20 years of experience. You had a co-author and a great publisher behind you. It is one of the hardest things you're going to do. If the one caveat I was going to give that, if you're trying to put out a good book. Yeah. Because anyone could go to ChatGPT and anyone could like just throw something out on Amazon and it would be a book, but it wouldn't be a great book. Right. Your intent was putting out a great book. My intent was putting out a great book that would change people's lives. What advice would you give to those high achievers that are running businesses, but also have a calling on their heart to write a book?
I think you need to take your time, but you also need to know that it's not just on you. In order to bring your vision to life, it needs to be team. You need to create your team and you need to go in an executional model where you need to rise above just yourself. I think that without my co-author and a lot of the people that were working on the back end of this book, it could have never been the experience that people are going to have with pain-free performance. I didn't even know what I didn't know before I went in and signed a book contract. I didn't even know to ask the right questions. Yep. And I think looking back on it now, I'm like, wow, now I'm seasoned in the entire process. But I think the number one thing is that you're not just sitting there, typing away for 10 years and writing your diatribe yourself. I think if you want to be able to bring it to the masses, you want to have your best foot forward, that you need to obviously do the hard work, put in the time, concentrate on it. But you need to be able to bring in different voices and different expertise that complement what you don't naturally have.
Yeah. For me, I brought in an editor that I told him, I was like, hey, this is my first book. I don't know if it's good. I was like, I want you to tell me if I have some fluff in there, tell me to get it out. If I made a great point but didn't go deep enough, I want you to tell me that and I can elaborate on it further. So like you said, having that help and being vulnerable and saying, look, tell me what I can do to make this a great book, because I really want to have an impact on the world or my specific niche or whatever it might be.
One of the hardest things about pain-free performance was we had this legendary certification course. And we wanted to have the essence of that certification course and the feel and the experience in a totally different medium, which was holding a book in your hand and reading text versus being in a room with 50 other professionals that were also believing in what you believe in, and you were feeding off that energy. So I think that we thought it was going to be a little bit easier. We're like, oh, we already got the curriculum. We have all the content. Let's just put it into written word. And I've written a lot over my career. So, this is going to be easy. But when you are trying to elevate the standard of what you're doing and you want to have an evergreen thing that lives on forever, even beyond your years, you need to do above and beyond. Yeah. And I think that when we started to evolve it and we started to fill the holes and we started to get new curriculums in there and simplify concepts, that took it from a year to 2 years. And then at 2 years to 7 more months, it was really just trying to go in and perfect it down to the point where how do we make sure that this is a #1 hit? And I think it did take 3 years to do it. Publishing house was not super psyched about it. Me and Glenn were definitely not psyched that it took this long, but when it did come out, there's nothing but pride behind what we did because I don't believe that we could have done anything more.
That's awesome. Then does the app that you created go with the book or is that separate?
It's a separate business.
You put a lot of work into that app.
Yeah. So the app launched in late summer.
And what's it called for
It's
everyone?
called becomeunbreakable.com. It's the Unbreakable Training App. And that is the complement. So the book is the education. You can get started on the programs, but the app makes it all come to life. And it is the true train along. And that has been something, it's in partnership with Pain Free Performance. And it is the same system and it has some similar branding. And it is essentially where we want people to go after they get some results from the initial programs in the book.
Awesome. Yeah. So people go check out that app. And what's the cost?
It's about $60 a month.
Okay, great. But for anyone that wants to actually lean into pain-free performance and train the right way, $60 a month is a drop in the bucket.
That's what we're thinking. It's the best value out there. And the way that we design the app is pretty interesting because it's an all-access membership, meaning that we have about 10 different tracks of training, and then we have different training protocols, we have different mobility programs, cardio and conditioning optionality, nutrition, and then on-demand live coaching from me and my staff. And I think that it brings it full circle to giving world-class value and results-driven programming for people that almost anyone could be in the price point to afford.
Yeah, give up your Starbucks, give up your Netflix, and get on this app. Sounds good. All right, so let's shift to legacy because this is, for me writing that book, my book, and this podcast even is part of my legacy. It's stuff that, this thing can carry on for not just the next generation, but generations to come. How do you see legacy and what you're currently doing and what you see in the future?
I dedicated this book to my son, Cam. And that's my legacy. It's my living, breathing legacy. And my family and my community, those are the things that I want to become known for. But also something that resonates really deeply with me that you continue to show is that it's not what you do, it's who you are. And I saw you say that maybe like a year ago or so. I know you said it before, but then you wrote it again in the book. And I think so much about that. Because I'm in the profession of personal training education, strength coaching education. These aren't the people that are going out and making tens of millions of dollars a year. They're the ones that are putting themselves last many times to be able to pay it forward to people in a pure service-based profession. Mm-hmm. And when I think about that line of like, it's not what you do, it's who you are, it's that energy that you're bringing in, that amount of care for somebody else. And just making somebody's life better because you have the tools to do it up here and in here. And at that point, that was really a big game changer for me is that I want to live by that as well. I mean, many times with the stress of business ownership and the stress of being the front face of something, as I've been with Pain Free Performance and many of my other businesses, is that you lose track of that. And that's something that moving forward, I want to be super focused in on because I know that I have my living, breathing legacy in my own household. I have a beautiful family. I have everything that I need in this life, but I want to make sure that I'm appreciating that on the day-to-day because that will ultimately give me the most amount of joy, which is being able to continue to share all of this with others. And I look at my position and my profession is more than just a work. It's a vocation. Like it's why I'm here. It's what I'm meant to do. And we were talking with friends a couple of weeks ago, and it was like life qualified you to come in and do this your whole life, not your degrees, not your courses. It's your whole life's work. And he was so proud because he said, hey, you got that in one resource now. And it's more than just that. And I think that legacy lives on, but it's also the way in which you're living it through others.
Yeah, so good. I was reminded this week of a great quote by Trent Shelton. I don't know if you've heard him speak before. He was a former athlete that now is just one of the best speakers on the planet. And he said, you don't need to find your purpose, you are purpose. Mm. And I was reminded of that this week because I've heard him say it a couple of times, and it goes right to the, who you are, not what you do. because a lot of people are searching for their purpose and not realizing their very unique being, their life circumstances that's led them up to who they are today is the purpose. And it's now, how do you use that purpose to give back to the world in the service of others?
Well, I look back on, the way we started the podcast, how did I get into this position? I was the son of awesome parents, and those were my role models. Not once did I ever think about how much money they were making. Not once did I ever think about like, oh, I wonder what so-and-so thinks about them. I knew that the way that they walked into the room, the way that they lit up a room, and the way that they had respect from people, that was what I wanted. And the way that they were able to share their vocation with others, that is what I wanted from an early age. It took me many years and decades to get there, but I think on the right path, nowhere near being at the end of this journey. But that early on was what I wanted to chase. And I'm still chasing that today, almost 40 years later. Yeah,
that's awesome. And for those that didn't grow up with awesome parents like you, one of the things that I talk about frequently is being that generational curse breaker.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, okay, so you didn't grow up with great parents, but what they did teach you is exactly what you didn't want to be.
Yeah.
So now live into that and who you do want to be. And it's just a paradigm, because not everyone gets blessed like that, like you and I did with great parents. But even myself with great parents, I'm sure you had this as well, is like, there were some things that I didn't want to carry on.
Yeah.
Like I wrote about in my book, like my dad's much better about it today. Talked to him yesterday. The I love yous growing up, the affirmations growing up, I didn't get those. And now I don't need them as a human. My wife tells me that often, but she does, and my kids do. And they hear I love you from me every day, at least once. So it's just like I chose to go a different path. And many people don't do that. And I think that's something that we all got to make that choice on. Well, this has been an awesome conversation. We can continue going. What's one thing that we didn't touch on that you wish we would have?
It's not always been smooth sailing on pain-free performance. I think many times people look at it as this hugely successful fitness and health education brand, and everything's been right since we got going. And I think that there's a lot of challenges behind the scenes that not a whole lot of people see, but a lot of the people that have been working inside of it felt.
You know what's interesting about that? I talked about that recently on a podcast I was interviewed on, is, from 24 to 35 in my entrepreneurial journey, everyone saw a straight line up from the outside in, but it's always like a stock market chart. Like it's up, it's down, it's one step forward, two steps back. But from the outside in, they just see the straight rise. Like, like you have a huge social media following, and it's like, okay, well, how did he get that? How did he earn that? Like it's steps. And then all of a sudden one video goes viral, and then all of a sudden floods come in, and then you say something wrong on the internet, and then people go out. And then, because I don't shut my mouth about many things, I've lost followers on stuff as well, which is fine. I want the right people. I want to be an impactor, not an influencer. But it's always ups and downs.
Yeah.
So everyone from the outside looking in that thinks that's just some straight line up, know that behind the scenes, there was many battles fought to continue getting to that peak.
If you believe in it, and this is what you are meant to do, it becomes easier to go in and fight those battles. But when you're in them, there's decisions that I look back on now, 5-6 years later, in the heat of many of these different challenges, that I'm like, holy shit, I believed in it, but I was also a little bit lucky that we got through that. And, you look at a lot of reflection moments when you're on the podcast tour and you're doing interviews and stuff, and you're talking about, the same topic over and over, which is pain-free performance. You almost have a reflection point of, wow, come a long way. But I tend to have these conversations bring out things in me that I haven't thought about in a long time, and that are many of the sparks of why I'm here today, even speaking and having the opportunity to come on a show like this.
Yeah, it's those epiphanies that come up that mean something. It's like these channels that get opened up in your brain. I was referencing, was this yesterday? I was getting interviewed, and he asked me about what great leadership or mentors have meant in my life. And I gave two examples, one great leadership, and then I gave her one of those really shitty that actually taught me a lesson. It was about my senior year football coach, who was the worst coach, worst leader I ever had, but still taught me something. Yeah. And it was just one of those memories that popped up from 25 years ago, or 28 years ago now, that it was just channeled, opened up.
I think a lot of the challenges that we face at Pain-Free Performance was around COVID. It was around 2020. It was around the shutdowns. It was around people not believing that holistic and preventative health was actually healthcare. It was me having my business shut down for 6 months. It was me deciding not to furlough anyone and keeping on a full staff of people and deciding to personally pay them out from my accounts that were dwindling at the time. And me basically losing everything overnight while I was overseas teaching a course in Sydney, Australia. And I tried to keep that out of my mind for a long time because those were some deep and dark days where I had to make decisions and I needed to be responsible not only for my own family and our financial security and our health, but the health of 10 other families as well.
Right.
Looking back on that is, I was so damn proud when we got out of that because I had a mission with people on board and we were able to go out and do things that other people weren't doing. And we made it out when nobody else made it out. And I think that the liberation of that felt so good. But I end up looking back at like the trajectory change of something like Pain-Free Performance. It was the lowest days yielded the highest days in less than a year.
Yeah, that's amazing. There's so many stories like that through COVID. And unfortunately, there's 1 million plus stories of businesses that shut down because of COVID. And that was a tough period in our history. And it's amazing that you took that on. And that's, I often tell people that are thinking about entrepreneurship or just don't understand the entrepreneur journey is like, until you actually sacrifice paying your own bills to make sure others can actually put food on their table, you don't know what it's like to be an entrepreneur. And if you can't stand that risk, or you couldn't stomach that risk, you should never get into it. Because the internet's glorified entrepreneurship lately. Yeah. And it is not a glorifying position to be in, as you just well illustrated. All right, last question I ask everyone. What's an unpopular belief you hold to be true that most others disagree with?
I think that our health is on us. Nobody's there to save you. We have resources. We have experts that can come in. We have books and we have apps and we have articles. But ultimately, it comes down to you and making a decision to want more out of your life, to want more out of your health, to want more out of your entire lifestyle. And I think that many people are pushed to the brink of breaking before they make a change, when in all actuality, that change is right in front of us from almost all of us. We just need to go out and actually do it. But nobody's coming to save you. You got to save yourself, and you got to be the first one to go in and take responsibility.
Yeah. 100%. That goes for politicians or anyone else. No one is coming to save you. Your parents aren't, your spouse isn't. It's got to be you. It's got to be a personal decision. So is Amazon the best spot for the book?
Amazon worldwide. Yeah. Any country.
All right. So you got Spartans, you got a couple jobs today. You got to go on Amazon, get Pain-Free Performance, get the Bible, get it on your coffee table. And while you're on there, if you haven't picked up the Kairos code, make sure you do so as well. But share this episode far and wide. We really appreciate Dr. John Rusin coming in today, sharing his expertise, giving some just unbelievable wisdom. And I really appreciate you. And so share it far and wide. Remember that good and great are the enemies of possible. Lead like a Spartan today.
This is